All right.
Yes.
Are we on?
Yep.
All right, let's call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order on December 6, 2017. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Donchis,
I'm here.
Alderman Cookson, Alderman Wilshire,
Here.
Alderman O'Brien,
Present.
Alderman Karen,
Here.
and Alderman Clemens is here. Alderman Siegel. Okay.
All right, we have five members present, and we have a quorum. We also have in the audience Alderwoman-elect Linda Gathright from Ward 9, so we appreciate that. We have a public comment section of the agenda. Is there any member of the public who wants to speak to members of the committee? And I don't see anyone, so we will go to communications. Alderman Clemens.
Communication from Dan Kukin regarding the purchase of NPD investigative equipment purchase, value $13,140. I would move to accept, place on file, and authorize the purchase in the amount of $13,140. Funds are available in Department 150 Police, Department of Justice Equitable Sharing Forfeiture Account.
Is there discussion on that motion? We also have Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager. I'm sorry, we didn't
It's okay.
recognize you earlier. David Fredette, City Treasurer in the back. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Alderman Clemens.
Communication from Dan Kukin regarding wastewater facility HVAC upgrades, change order number 3, value $54,099. I would move to accept, place on file, and authorize change order number 3 to the contract with Monadnock Commercial Building Company in the amount of $54,099. Source of funding is Department 169 wastewater.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Alderman Clemens.
Communication from Dan Kukin regarding SCADA upgrades project construction phase services. I would move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Weston and Sampson in the amount of $59,480. Funds are available in Department 169 wastewater, WRF.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Alderman Clemens.
Communication from Mayor Jim Donchis regarding change order number 3, 25 Crown Street Park and Ride. I would move to accept and place on file.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Unfinished business, we have none. New business resolutions, we have R17-148, and we have a representative of AVSG here to address any questions and give us a short explanation regarding the contract. So why don't you come up and sit on one of the, just right there at the corner, on the black chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And if you would introduce yourself to the committee and
Certainly.
briefly describe the contract that we're seeking to enter.
Certainly. My name is Mike Manning. I'm a director at AVSG. We're a Boston-based company that has built CNG stations throughout New England. And I've been really the primary contact between the city and AVSG since 2010 when the program was first discussed. We've been operating the station since October of 2011, primarily serving the refuse and recycling fleet with some other DPW and lighter-duty vehicles. But now, with the acquisition of 8 brand-new CNG buses by Nashua Transit, we're looking to expand our compression capability. We designed the building or the structure back in 2010 to accommodate a larger compressor, and we're really at that point in time where AVSG needs to invest in additional compression to really ensure that the buses, as they come online, are refueled in a timely manner. So the facility will not change at all. Again, we designed it to accommodate a larger compressor back in 2010. This is really swapping out one of 2 existing compressors and putting in a new compressor with additional compression capability.
And we are approving an amendment to the lease to make this possible.
That is correct, Mayor. It's a 5-year extension that would bring the contract through May of 2021.
And this will provide the CNG supply for the new buses we just purchased.
That is correct. We actually begin training with the Transit Department a week from tomorrow morning to get their drivers, their mechanics, and their management familiar with CNG refueling. And whereas refuse and recycling vehicles typically refuel in the morning, looks like the transit fleet, which works out very well, will refuel in the evening hours.
All right, so does anybody have any questions or comments? Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. Is the station open to the public?
It is, and I should qualify that compressed natural gas is really a fleet fuel. So when you say open to the public in that instance really means other fleets. I was speaking with the alderman about the public. The public, in terms of consumers, much more suited with electric vehicles or hybrid electric vehicles. CNG is really geared towards refuse and recycling fleets, transit fleets, and then delivery fleets like UPS, Federal Express, so on and so forth. So while I would never turn away a consumer or a private citizen wanting to utilize the station, we don't market to that segment because it's just not where the industry is. But yes, it is, in theory, open to the public.
If someone did have a CNG car, when I think you're saying that's highly unusual, they could buy fuel from you.
They could, Mr. Mayor, and it does happen, but it's not a commonplace occurrence.
Right. Alderman
Yeah,
Clemmons?
no, I guess I was more interested to see if, because I remember I was on the committee back when it was first proposed, and I was a proponent of it then, and I am now. But I was curious because I know at the time UPS had some interest in maybe converting their fleet to CNG, and I didn't know if any other companies around Nashua did that or looking into that still.
Correct. We had approached UPS. Unfortunately, with UPS, all local decisions are made in Atlanta, so there was a disconnect there. I'd say right now the fleet that a non-City of Nashua fleet that refuels is Liberty Utilities. They're a gas utility, obviously. It's in their best interest to use their own fuel for their vehicles. So today I would say that Liberty Utilities is probably the #1 non-City of Nashua fleet utilizing the station on Riverside.
How many vehicles in their fleet?
Mr. Mayor, that's a good question. I don't think it's a huge number, maybe 10 or 12. And they're primarily lighter duty vehicles. They're usually customer service vans, either Chevrolet or Ford vans that have been ordered through the factory to operate on compressed natural gas.
Any other comments, questions? Has there been a motion? I don't think there's been a motion on this, have there? Alderman Clemmons.
I would move to recommend passage of Resolution 17-148, approving an amendment to the lease and operating agreement with AVSG LP.
Any discussion or regarding the motion to recommend final passage? Mr. Kuchen.
Could I ask just one question? You
Yes.
Certainly.
said 2021, and this says 2026? Is it?
Oh, I'm sorry, right, the current contract ends in 2021. The amendment would extend that to 2026 and allow us to invest the monies for the additional compression.
All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes, and the resolution is recommended for final passage. Thank you very much for coming to visit.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy holidays to each and every one of you.
Thank you.
So on your desks is an agreement between the City of Nashua and Revive Recovery, which I'm going to ask the committee to at least consider under a suspension of the rules the resolution that would fund the Recovery Coach pilot project with Revive. Went before the Budget Committee last night, and a couple of members here were there, Alderman O'Brien and Alderman Wilshire. They recommended the final passage, I think, on a unanimous vote at the committee. The assuming the board were to adopt the recommendation of the Budget Committee and pass the resolution that would establish that pilot project, which I think which I discussed at the last meeting of the Board of Aldermen, we would enter a contract, namely this contract, with Revive for the provision of those services. There's a lot of boilerplate here, but Section 4 allows us, the city, to gain reports on a monthly basis regarding client outcomes and other information that we will want to demonstrate the effectiveness of the program, of the pilot. We would be asking for reports regarding how people in recovery are doing after 30, after 60, after 90, 180 days. Are they still in recovery? We'd be asking about relapse rates and the number of people who, of course, are being served, and the number of people who've left or broken off contact, so that we would get a very comprehensive look at the client population that the recovery coach would work with pursuant to this pilot. At any one time, the client population is the population that the number of cases or people or clients that the coach would be working with would be in the range of 20 to 40. Therefore, if the committee is of this mind, I would ask you to suspend the rules to consider this contract for approval. Alderman Wilshire.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules to accept the communication that was on our desk this evening.
Motion is to accept the communication or the contract entitled Agreement between the City of Nashua and the Revive Recovery. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. So we have the agreement before us. For your information, now I gave this to the members of the Budget Committee, but I did want to pass out, and maybe we should accept this as well, the AMR report that they do on a frequent basis for the city. Thank you, Alderman Wilshire. This just documents what happens or what's been happening with the Safe Stations reporter, people who've reported into safe stations, over 1,200 so far. The recovery coach that would be part of the pilot would work with those who have come off safe stations, obviously not all of them, but a certain proportion of them, in order to connect the next step of the process, the next piece that we need to put in place that is more help in terms of life coaching for the people who are beginning into recovery. We would be able to connect that part of this effort into the Safe Stations program. But this just shows you quite a lot of information about what's happening at safe stations. It shows that ODs are down 25% from this previous 12 months to the 12 months before that, and shows the number of OD calls and the number of fatalities on a monthly basis, as well as a lot of other information regarding the characteristics, the ages, the gender, et cetera, of the people reporting, the number of Narcan doses, the size of those doses, where the people are coming from, and a lot of other information regarding the Safe Stations program. Does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to the agreement? Alderman Clemmons.
Well, I actually have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Of course not.
One of the questions I have is the participation of this. Is everyone that comes to the stations, are they, is it all opioid related, or is there a mix of other issues?
It's definitely a mix. I would say, most of it is opioids, but certainly we are getting people who are reporting with alcohol issues, and also to some degree other drugs such as cocaine or crystal meth. Now, I don't think this report, Harbor Homes reports on that split every so often, and I don't think this report includes it, but I think roughly 3/4 are opioids, and maybe a little less than that, and maybe 20% are alcohol, and then there's a small proportion of other, other harmful drugs. In terms of we are developing a committee. We have a group that meets and talk about safe stations every 2 weeks. That includes the fire department, AMR, a bunch of people from Harbor Homes, Revive Recovery, and a bunch of other hospitals. And there is a smaller group of people who is now going to start meeting regarding some of the people who have come back, because there are a small number of people who've come back repeatedly, 3, 4, 5, 6 visits. Some of them tend to be involved with alcohol as opposed to opioids. Alcohol is actually, at least from what they tell me, in some ways a more difficult dependence to work with, because just because of the way alcohol affects someone when they are, they've been drinking quite a bit, and they've become less willing to seek recovery once they kind of sober up a little bit. But anyway, we're trying to get a group that's trying to work on the problem cases so that a treatment plan can be developed for them to hopefully steer them into a better set of choices.
Okay.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended, as you know, the budget hearing last night. And I would like to say that I was very impressed with the 3 representatives of this group that came. Because the way they explained it last night, this is another piece in the puzzle to our goal to get these people sober. This is like a life coach that will come out and do outreach, and we can take care of the medical needs, but the way one of the gentlemen explained it, what about the other needs of searching for an apartment, or learning how to take the transit system, learning the different things that you would need in your recovery to be, a successful citizen again. And we don't have that right now. We seem to take care, the initial, try to get them sober and open up the door for them. But this seems like an important piece of the puzzle that's got to come in and stop the recidivism that we're getting, that we might be seeing in some of these people today. So I would like to say, and I hope you don't mind me speaking for it, but again, I was very impressed with their presentation last night. Again, it's a very important piece in the puzzle, and maybe in the future, we can look at granting from what was presented last night, that once we open the door to get this one position going, we can look in the maybe in the future if we decide we need another type of coaching type of situation to take care of the needs. Now, our citizens at home might ask and say, well, geez, is this really our responsibility? I think it is. I mean, many of these people are good citizens. They need something. They got into whatever reason they got into the particular quagmire. But this piece of the puzzle will get them back on the right track, to which we all want to see somebody to have a nice, successful life. So I support this I think this is a great idea.
Now, we went on it, there was quite a bit of information presented last night, but one of the things is that for someone who has sought recovery and maybe gone through an inpatient program, 30 days or 28 days, they're beginning on the process of recovery, but their brain, which has been altered by the addiction and use of something like fentanyl or heroin, has not recovered at all. Or certainly not completely resumed normal brain activity. That takes a year to 2 years. So someone coming off a 30-day program can still have trouble really sorting through normal life decisions. Where do I go? How do I stay away from the people who are dealing drugs? Where do I live? How do I get, as Alderman O'Brien was saying, how do I get the bus system? How do I find a job? Where do I go to get a car loan? Things like this, kind of getting their feet. And not only anecdotal, but there is research showing that someone to kind of help a person through these normal life decisions, as well as kind of serving as someone that can be consulted regarding the necessity to stay sober, has a significant impact and increases the likelihood of success by a considerable amount. Alderman Wilshire.
Thank you. I am going to support this. I think we need 10, 15 of these positions here in the city with the increase we've seen in the opioid crisis here. I believe in the peer-to-peer recovery model. I think it's helpful. I think the 3 people that were here last night were great. And who can tell someone better than someone who's been through it themselves? Say, hey, this is what I did, this is what worked, let me help you get there. So the other thing, when you talk about should the city be funding this, what I believe as a nonprofit manager for my whole career, if the city buys in to a program like this, it leverages other funding sources, other grants, other opportunities. So the city's not really in the recovery business, but the city is a partner in making that happen with our nonprofit network, which we have a pretty good one here in the city. And I got to give huge kudos to Harbor Homes for stepping up. But I think, honestly, I think that this short money will increase the buy-in. It shows the city has buy-in, and grantors out there will look at that and say, well, if the city's going to buy in, maybe we should too. So I'm all for it.
And part of the obligation that Revive would have to develop this information is to make the case that were someone else to step forward and fund additional recovery efforts, that it would yield results. And that's the goal of providing the detailed reporting that we're asking for. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. Do they have somebody in mind for this position?
I think not yet. They would, advertise for the position. There are quite a few people, I think, who would be interested, but I don't think they have anyone specifically in mind. Alderman Clemmons.
I don't disagree with the sentiment, and I don't disagree with what the city is trying to do. I'm just wondering, I guess where I'm hesitant is how do we determine because if you look at these statistics on here, right? So there's, literally what, 500, 600, 700 people that walk through the door? No, 1,061 people were taken to recovery facilities. How is one person supposed to even decide how to split those cases? I just, am concerned that there would be, that we're asking somebody to do an impossible task. And it, I mean, it's a high stressful job with a lot of burnout. And I guess, uh,
Now, do you want me to?
yeah, I mean, I
respond?
I guess the struggle that I'm having with it is um, why only one position?
Well, I mean, this is an issue that we've discussed with the whole Safe Stations team. And the way I think we started into this is that um, we know a few things. First, Harbor Homes has been trying, once a person comes out of recovery, I mean, they're on their own. And
Mhm.
they're not necessarily in touch with the treatment facility where they receive treatment. Even someone who has gone in, has not done an inpatient program, but is on an intensive outpatient, once they kind of leave treatment, they are out in the world and no one really knows where they are.
Mhm.
So Harbor Homes has been trying to begin to call some of these people over a period of months, and the success rate in reaching people is very low. They've got different numbers, they maybe have gone somewhere else, they're living somewhere else. So we're not really able to determine, where is everybody? How well are they doing? So there was a report in the New York Times about a gentleman police officer up in Laconia by the name of Eric Adams, and they do not have a Safe Stations program, but he, several years ago, as a police officer, was responding to a lot of OD calls in Laconia, medical calls.
Mhm.
And really on his own time initially, he began to follow up with these people, with the people that were
Mhm.
taken to the hospital. He had no expertise in recovery. He's not a trained, licensed alcohol and drug abuse counselor or anything like that. But he began to, he had some credibility. He had access into the emergency room. He knew who the people were. He had access to he knew social service agencies and the like. And he began working with people. Hey, just call him up. Hey, Joe, how's it going? Do you need any help? And he began working with an expanding group of people. And he began to have considerable success in keeping people in recovery, to the point where ultimately the Laconia Police Department put him on this full time. Rather than his normal police duties, he began into the sort of recovery assistance full time. And he, being unable to handle the entire caseload, as you have suggested, uh, the community responded because they'd seen, what he was able to do. They responded by uh, establishing a much broader group of recovery coaches, so that now most of the people, or I'm not sure the exact proportions, but most all of the people who get taken to the emergency room in Laconia now have access to one of many recovery coaches, all of which began with the work done by Eric Adams. So based upon that experience, and based upon the fact that we have limited funds, and we hope to involve others in this effort, I have been saying, well, look, if we could get one person who was working with a group of people, and yes, I mean, obviously, one recovery coach cannot work with 1,000 people. The estimate is 20 to 40 at any one, maybe even 50, but probably not. 20 to 40 at any one time. Maybe there's a little bit of rotation. So over the course of a year, maybe 40, 60, 80, 100 people, something like that. That if we could get one recovery coach for a limited amount of money, we could partner with Revive, who knows this business quite well, and they would do the hiring and the like. And if out of that person we could develop not only the kind of the anecdotal, here's what I've found kind of story, as Eric Adams has done, but also statistical data showing I've worked with so many people and here's the kind of effectiveness there's been, that this many are still in recovery, et cetera. That if we had one pilot program, that based upon what happened in Laconia, that we might then be able to convince others that expanding the network is worth it, and we might find other funding sources. We might convince other people to become involved in trying to expand the network. On the other hand, I don't think this is going to take place, but if it just had no effect whatsoever, we would know, well, we tried that and it didn't work. So you are totally right, Alderman Clemmons, that there's no way that this person could work with 1,000 people or, even a majority of the people who come through in a year, but at least some, and the choice to some extent would be, I hate to use this term, but random, in a sense that we just need him to work with any group of people, that are coming in recovery. And I suppose those that get this service are more fortunate than the ones who don't, but it's better to be helping 50 people than 0. So we help 50 people if that were the number, and we develop information that might lead to more people getting the same kind of help. So that's the thought process. And this has taken place over 6 months probably. That's the thought process that has led to this this step. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you for the explanation, and I think it's I think we need to start somewhere. I guess my concern with it was I don't want to see it fail because a person is overwhelmed or we're not putting enough, we're not giving it enough go at the beginning to make sure that it's something that is going to be successful. So that's my concern. That's where my concern was coming from. Not that I don't, like I said, not that I don't agree with the idea of it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that we need to do. But more of, are we doing enough to ensure its success? I certainly will support it, but I hope that I hope that if for some reason there are issues relating to the success of it, but more in the sense of the fact that the person is overwhelmed or we can't help enough people or we just don't have enough resources. I hope that the reaction is not one of, well, this was a waste of money, but rather we didn't spend enough and we didn't get enough resources out there to do the job. And I hope that, as you say, Mayor, that the community will come around and rally behind something like that, because I would hate to see us do an endeavor like this and have it fail because we just didn't give it enough push at the beginning.
Well, I appreciate that. So the 3 people who came to the Budget Committee last night were Justin Edling, who owns and runs Process Recovery in Hudson, which is an inpatient treatment facility, as well as another organization that is running about 10 to 12 sober houses in Nashua and the surrounding area, and serves about 120 people in those sober houses, and has been in recovery himself for 20 years. His story, he didn't tell the whole thing last night, but it's quite inspiring. He somehow, family troubles, parents involved with the heroin and the like. So he got sort of addicted when he was a teenager, and by himself, he went into recovery, lived on Palm Street, worked at the, and by himself, he's now gone sober, goes, works at the mall, a couple of different jobs, aside this is leading, nowhere. He gained some computer training, then got into IT, never actually went to college, but more like, trade school kind of level stuff. But he moved up in IT and was the head IT guy for a hedge fund down in Boston. And after working at that for some years, decided that I think he had a brother or he knew someone very well who OD'd and fatally. So he worked with, he decided to invest his time and money into recovery. And so he's developed this entire network, very devoted. And the other two people are in recovery, but not as long as Justin. But they know this business, I think, and if you were here, you would agree, if you'd been there, very, very well. And they are very conscious of the fact that a recovery coach cannot function effectively if they have too many people. So where the number is coming, where the number is coming from is 20 to 40 is from them. They think that number works, that you can success depending on who you're dealing with and
Sure.
the various problems, the individual circumstances, that you can work with that many people and successfully or have enough contact with them to be effective. And so they would be supervising this person. We are getting information, but they're supervising the work and will, I think, realistically manage this pilot program so that the person is not overextended. We could fund 2 or 3 or 4. I mean, they could have 10 probably right now, but
Sure.
but we're also dealing with some members of the public who are somewhat skeptical of or at least a few people. Why are you doing this? Which I think we understand that this is a problem that affects the entire community and more than just those that are involved with these drugs. And so it's a way to make a reasonable expenditure, try to accomplish something in the short term, and expand the effort as we go along. I mean, could we? Yeah, you're right. I mean, if we did 5, could they hire it and probably get them all busy within a couple of months? Probably. Probably 10, with 1,000 people coming through, they could probably do more than 10. Anyway, that's. Alderman Karen.
Thank you. I agree, we could hire 100 people and work, but sometimes you have to do it slow so that you get it right, and you have a company that handles this and certainly will not stress that person out. But I agree with Alderman Wilshire. Hopefully, if this is successful and it's here and we do it in other towns, maybe the state will step up and start giving more funding to these agencies or even the communities so that they can continue this on a bigger scale, because we weren't sure about the safe stations and look at how well that has gone. So I think that if we work in conjunction with other agencies, I think that's important. And so it gives some credibility to both the agency and the city as a whole that we're trying to reach out to our community as a whole, because they're still part of our community. So I'm all for it, and I'll support
One
this.
of the other people that appeared last night is a guy named Alan Irwin, who grew up over here on Pleasant Street. And, he's got parents, family that are involved, addicted to various things and troubled childhood. And eventually he got involved with, some kind of opioids and has been in recovery for a couple of years, but he's very devoted. He knows the city. He's a product of Nashua, and as is Justin, grew up on, or at least launched his recovery from Palm Street. So I think the people are knowledgeable, dedicated. They know the community. They are very involved themselves in recovery coaching. They've worked with a lot of people, each one of them, but they are more involved in kind of trying to develop a larger network, doing recovery coach academies, managing all these different facilities. So, you know, they don't have a person yet that they could just devote. This person is going to be a recovery coach. So we help them expand in that fashion with this pilot in a way that hopefully will demonstrate enough success that we can attract more resources and help.
Great.
So is there a motion on this? I don't think we have a motion. Alderman Clemmons?
I'd move to accept, place on file, and authorize the city of Nashua to enter into the agreement with Revive Recovery Incorporated in the amount of $42,000.
Any discussion? Alderman Wilshire?
All I can say is money well spent. for my
Thank you.
opinion.
If there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. New business ordinances, we have none. Record of expenditures? Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you. I move that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period of November 10th, 2017 to November 30th, 2017.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the record of expenditures is approved. Next item is public comment. Is there any member of the public, and I don't see anyone, but is there any member of the public who'd like to address the committee? If not, we'll go to discussion. These discussion by committee members. Is there any committee member wishes to discuss, raise any issues? Discuss anything? If not, Alderman Wilshire.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the meeting is adjourned at 7:42 PM.